Hi, I'm Gary White for Central Kentucky Television. I'm here with Dr. Don Giles, who is a professor at St. Catherine College in Springfield with philosophy and religion. And today he's here to talk about his first published book, right?
That's it, yeah.
And the name of the book is?
Well, it's a Shaolin Chronicles, The Wisdom of Bodhidharma. That's what it's called. Yeah.
Now, we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, and the Shaolin Chronicles, this is the first in what you foresee as a 3-book series,
That's
correct?
exactly right. Yeah, this sort of sets the foundation, the philosophical base and foundation for what will eventually follow.
Now, Shaolin is a monastery?
It is. It's really regarded as sort of the most famous monastery in China. It's the place where martial arts enthusiasts consider to be sort of the birthplace of martial arts. The old show Kung Fu. David Carradine was a monk at the Shaolin Monastery. So for a lot of folks, this is sort of like the Holy Grail or the Mecca of where martial arts comes from.
Now, it still stands?
It does, yeah. It still stands, and they still are practicing Buddhist monks there. And in fact, the Jet Li was, I don't know if you've heard Jet Li in the movies, but he was a student at Shaolin Monastery. Okay. And they tend to tour a lot and perform with their martial arts spectacles, but in their own right, they still practice Buddhist meditation and study Buddhism. Okay.
Now, this is the wisdom of Bodhidharma.
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 Yep.
Bodhidharma.
Yep.
And that is a person who may have lived, correct?
That's right. Scholars aren't real sure. It's sort of a pseudo-historical figure. There's a lot of things attributed to him that supposedly he wrote a few works. They're considered sort of on a par with what Buddha wrote himself. They're called sutras. And he's recognized as sort of being a person who brought Chan Buddhism, which became Zen Buddhism, from China, or from India to China. He supposedly began these sort of movement exercises that became martial arts eventually. And they even attribute tea to Bodhidharma. There's sort of this myth where he's famous. The picture of him is normally large bulging eyes with no eyelids. Supposedly when he was meditating in this cave for a number of years, he cut off his eyelids, and where his eyelids fell, tea bushes grew.
Okay.
So you start getting into that stuff, and it's like, well, that's probably not really historical. Yeah. So what might be real, what might not be real? Who's to say? That's exactly right.
So what time period is this book?
Well, it's in the first few hundred years, basically of AD. 300, 400 AD, around that time period. It's when Buddhism was beginning to spread. It was sort of pushed out of India, but it found a home in China. And one of the original stories about Bodhidharma is that he went to sort of the Emperor of China. And the Emperor of China told him that he had been building all kind of monasteries there and getting works translated into Chinese that were originally written in India. And the Emperor wanted to know, how much merit will I get for all of my activities, for doing all this wonderful stuff? And Bodhidharma says, no merit whatsoever. And the Emperor can't believe that. He says, well, I've done all this stuff. I'm sponsoring these monasteries. I've done all this stuff. And that like good karma, He's like, no karma at all, no good merit at all. And he's like, well, who are you to tell me that I don't get any good karma from that? And Bodhidharma's response is, I don't know who I am. And he turns and he leaves and he goes and sits in a cave for 9 years meditating. And
cutting off silence.
Yeah, just working on the silence thing. And this takes up from there. This takes up where a student at Shaolin actually finds Bodhidharma in the cave and sort of begins to sneak out at night and meet with him and starts to kind of learn personal instruction from him. And he begins to realize that, his masters at Shaolin are bright. They're Buddhist masters. But Bodhidharma has this sort of unique way of talking about things. So right off the bat, chapter 1 is basically Tay finding Bodhidharma, going to see him again, and they get into this little discussion about free will. And Tay, like most of us believe he has free will, and Bodhidharma is explaining to him that he really isn't as free as he thinks he is. And then that kind of gets Tay wondering. It's like, who's this person to tell me I'm not free? But that's intriguing to him, so he wants to continue to go back.
So he sounds like the kind of guy who made you think.
Definitely. I mean, that's the point of it all, is to really examine, and to challenge, what our basic concepts are about who we are, what we believe. anybody that would read a book like this, irregardless of their religion, whether they're religious or not, it really is about challenging who we are as individuals and what our belief is. And also working on actually becoming more present in our lives, you know, how we're scattered all over the place. And that's really the philosophy of Buddhism. It's like, can we really be here now? Can we really be present to what we're doing without thinking about all the other things that I just did and I'm going to do in the next few minutes?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, you said that this is actually kind of an adventure story as well, right?
It is. It's really exciting because Tay, who is this student, I mean, there's lots of characters in this, lots of minor characters, and Tay is the nickname for this student. He becomes kind of a person at the monastery he's asked to take care of an old master who's dying. He's asked to teach some of the students who gather at the gate. That was one of the famous things about Shaolin, is that it was a place where you knew you could be fed. If you were young, there was a lot of poverty at the time. If a family could get their son, particularly into the Shaolin monastery, they knew that he would be educated, fed, and have a nice life, even though he would be a Buddhist monk. So the students, the youngsters, would gather at the gates every morning, and just hoping that the masters would let them in. And of course, the famous scene, you know, this reflects a lot. I grew up watching Kung Fu, and you know, one of the opening scenes in the Kung Fu show is the whole, you know, snatch the pebble from my hand as quick as you can. And of course, young, you know, Kwai Ching Keen isn't able to get it. And the master says, you know, when you can take the pebble, it'll be time for you to leave. But the reason that he asked Kwai Ching Keen in the show to stay is because they passed them all these kids out a bowl of rice each. And the master said, you can go ahead and eat. Well, all the kids started eating except young Kane. He just sits there. And Kane's looking at the master. It's like the master's not eating yet. So the master says, thanks, you can all leave. And then Kane gets up too, and he says, but not you. He goes, why not? He said, well, you know, you waited for me to eat. So that showed some kind of sign of humility. So in this text, Tay is actually asked to teach these students while they're sitting by the gates waiting to get in. Why not go ahead and teach them? But ultimately, he goes to Bodhidharma, and Bodhidharma sends him on a quest. He says, I want you to bring back living water from Mount Nichu. And he goes out and he runs into an adventure. There's a town that's being kind of held ransom by some tyrants. There's a little love interest that kind of comes up there too. I mean, he's a Buddhist monk, but all of a sudden he finds himself attracted to this young lady. You know, but he's got to stay away from all that and stay on his path. At another time, he's not successful. Bodhidharma says this isn't right, sends him out again. He encounters sort of an evil shaman, learns all kinds of wizardry kind of stuff. There's an 8-headed dragon in this that he has to battle. You don't really know whether this stuff's going on inside of him or outside of him, but you know, we're battling our own demons kind of as we progress.
Right.
There's another time he runs into this kind of young man, a little bit older than him, who's just simply been living in the forest, like taking care of the forest, taking care of the animals. No philosophy, no religion, just a person who's connected to nature. And at that time, Tay's really attracted to that. But he's slowly progressing and learning, but he's never successful when he gets back to Bodhidharma. He's never successful. And at the end of this is one of those sort of moments where in Buddhism, there's sort of this moment at which it's like you're filled up like a balloon, ready to pop. So he finally comes to Bodhidharma at the end, and it's a very exciting interchange that goes on. Tay eventually does attain this sort of notion of what's called Dharma insight, or truth, or enlightenment. And that paves the way for Bodhidharma to be introduced to the monks at Shaolin, and that's where he goes to finally start teaching meditation and eventually what becomes martial arts. But this ends with really Tay being successful, receiving what's called Dharma transmission from Bodhidharma. He goes on to teach, but then Bodhidharma goes to Shaolin to begin to teach there.
And as we said, this is going to be the first in a series of 3 chronicles,
right,
mm-hmm. that Dr. Giles is writing. Now you're working on the other ones now too, so you have to have them soon.
That's right.
This is available actually on Amazon?
You can go on Amazon under books and you can type in my name or the title and it'll pop up. And I think the cost on Amazon right now is something like $17.50, something like that. I'm arranging a few different book signings. I'm scheduled to do one at the Marion County Public Library this Saturday at 11 o'clock. And there it'll only cost you $15. If you're a student, it'll only be $12. And there's not a lot of margin for for profit in books. But,
yeah.
you know, it's like I really hope folks will have an opportunity to read this because, again, it has less to do about martial arts, Buddhism, and those sorts of things as it does about the challenges that each of us face in our own paths and those times in which we really are challenged to be introspective and really look deep inside about who we are and how we can continue to move in a positive direction. And again, the readers who read this looked at it and just said, this is one of the most exciting, fun books that they have read to actually also learn about philosophy and Buddhism and life. It's like, this is just an exciting story. Like, this ought to be a movie, you know, and yet all the way through it, you're just learning all this neat stuff. And you kind of take on this role of Tay to where you're challenging yourself and you're looking at yourself. And it's like, how would I respond in this situation? And what would I do here? And would I be able to persevere?
So it's Saturday, January the 10th at the Marion County Public Library at 11 a.m., right?
That's it, that's right, yeah.
So it sounds like when you're writing, you're still teaching about philosophy. So they're learning something still.
I am, that's right.
In their novels here too.
Yeah, I can't help but teach, you know, so the books that I write are always, you're always going to be learning something. But the exciting thing about this was to be able to take something that, again, is sort of pseudo-historical and can I create a fictional work around this sort of lore and really kind of bring it to life, also make it exciting and yet still be able to kind of learn and get something out of it. And again, the readers who have read it said, you know, they really enjoyed it. It's sort of like a one-of-a-kind opportunity to get excited and to go on this journey and actually learn traditional historical kind of stuff, you know, the teachings anyway. Now,
this is your first published work, correct?
It is.
How long did it take?
To write this? Shame to say. I was working on this probably 15 years ago. Yeah, and
it evolves.
It evolves over time. And during that time, I've been writing other things too. So there's actually a couple other books that I'll probably be able to come out with in the next year or so that are very close to being finished. One's on Tai Chi, which is sort of a form of martial arts, and one's on meditation. But all of them have been kind of in the draft phase, and an opportunity came along to where a publisher was interested in doing this, and it's like, well, maybe it's time to. Pam got on me, my wife. Yeah. She said, you're doing all this writing, you need to get something out there, get it
out there.
That's right.
That's right. Let everybody else experience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so
very good.
Yeah,
very good. So you can go to Amazon.com, type in Dr. Don Giles, or type in the name of the book, and you can purchase this as well there. And then possibly, if you're around on January the 10th, it could be at the Marion County Public Library at 11 a.m. for a book signing there.
Right.
And there will be some others as well. Or go visit Dr. Giles at St. Catherine's. You're a professor out there too, right?
Absolutely, I am. Yeah, and I think they're going to arrange a book signing down the road at St. Catherine College too. I mean, they're looking to do that as well. And you know, professors don't think of themselves obviously as celebrities or anything. You know, signing a book is sort of the closest we ever get, and it's not something we're accustomed to. We're accustomed to writing A's, B's, C's, D, you know, D. So it's
great.
Yeah, so this is an exciting opportunity for me, but again, it's not something that I think of. I had a former professor who taught me at the University of Kentucky. You know, I taught there for 10 years before coming to St. Catherine College, and I've been at St. Catherine's now for about 14 years. But he's living in California now, and he said, well, I'm going to send you a copy. I'm going to buy a book, send you a book, you autograph it for me, and then send it back to me, and I'll pay for all of that shipment. I said, well, great, that sounds cool.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming and talking with us about it.
I really appreciate you, taking the time to talk about this.
So one of our local authors, because Dr. Giles does live in Washington County now.
I do,
right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Washington County resident, also teaches over there. So this has been Gary White with Dr. Don Giles. Get the copy of the book at Amazon.com.